to keep Mr. DeCoulis waiting. Busy man.
Good evening. This is the Raleigh Conservation Commission meeting for February 11th, 2014. This meeting of the Raleigh Conservation Commission is hereby called to order under authority of MGL Chapter 131, Section 40, the Town of Raleigh's Wetlands Protection Bylaw, and the Stormwater Management and Erosion Control Bylaw. And I'll call the roll for attendance. Dave DeMonico, currently absent. Bob Garner. Here. Judy Keys is currently absent. Sam Strife is currently absent. Kirk Turner.
Here.
And Doug Watson.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we do not have a quorum present, but we do have enough to conduct administrative business.
Okay.
If I may, request for reimbursement of cell phone, let's see what else is on there, postage.
Post office box.
PO box rental, yes.
I'm gonna need your pen, sorry.
Only thing you're supposed to bring to a meeting.
I know, I brought the wrong one that was dry. So.
Is this an extra one?
Oh, it is.
For Bob?
Correct.
Yeah. Somebody forces me to use Blue Ink. Doug, if I could get your initials on backup invoices. This is a request for reimbursement going through the Notice of Intent Fund. It's my registration fee for going to the MACC annual conference and also the mailing out of a permit. That's for Kirk.
Not want to leave my house.
More duty.
It's nice and warm here.
Good. Good.
Bumped up the temperature a bit.
How are you, besides cold?
Well, otherwise.
Dave is going to be a few minutes late, so we're going to have to wait for him for the second item because Bob wasn't here for the first part of that one, so we won't have a proper quorum.
Okay, we do have minutes. Brief moment since it's just a two-pager. Jean was in this morning to assist me by proofing it, so hopefully we'll have already caught the grammatical junk.
Anything? to change.
I don't see anything either. I'm sorry I missed the presentation on the catch basin and stuff. That was interesting.
It was interesting. Guy's basically an inventor. He's a manufacturer of something else entirely, but he got it into his head that he wanted to invent this. And put a lot of money into designing and actually manufacturing these things.
Does it have a patent?
I don't remember, but I don't think so. Might have been pending. But the number that sticks with me is he had spent 6 figures on it at this point. And he was trying to get the industry, which would include us in a sense.
To accept it?
Yeah, well, to recognize that it was
Well,
out
yeah,
there.
start
something-
specifying it. It's sort of like
Yeah.
one of those things, what good is it if you invent it if nobody knows?
Right.
It's there to use.
It was in the process of being approved by state level stuff, but he, rightly felt that if people like us don't know that it exists, we'll never be able to ask anyone to use it. So it's an interesting approach.
Yeah, of course, we could probably recommend it, if it was
Mhm.
appropriate to a certain situation.
Yeah, and I think typically an engineer wouldn't know it existed, because they haven't heard of it either, but it did have some pretty interesting engineering.
Do you remember the name of the product?
I don't. We do have the stuff.
Yeah, but,
He left us a nice set. Yeah. Do you remember the name of that? Do you know what we're talking about? It's a guy named
Todd Warren?
Todd Warren. And he has a
Andover.
a conical catch
Yeah, it's
basin
like an insert.
device
yeah.
that
So-
treats and filters stormwater within the
Within the catch basin.
stormwater catch basin,
Huh.
but does it much more efficiently than the conventional designs. So there's,
Works the opposite way you would intuitively think,
right.
if I remember
The
correctly.
water goes down to the bottom and then rises up
comes
inside
out
a cone.
and pushes itself through filter.
Right.
Huh.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Todd Warren, huh?
Yeah. I think he was from Andover. Does that?
I'll have to look up the stuff.
Somewhere
Yes,
around here.
yes,
Somewhere
he's
in
in
West County.
Andover, and he was actually a contractor.
Does he have a company name?
I have to look it up. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not in the minutes. The reason we're talking about it is he happened to be in on July 9th. You weren't here, so that's why I missed it. So any changes to the minutes by anyone?
No, one here.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the minutes, the draft minutes of the meeting of July 9th, 2013?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And the minutes are approved.
Thank you very much.
All right, now, the first item on the agenda is the 7:45 item. I'm going to read a letter from Mr. John DeCoulis, who happens to be sitting in front of me. Good morning, Brent. Please continue the public hearing for DEP file number 63-625 Marion Way to your March 4th, 2014 meeting. Thank you, John DeCoulis. So I take it we don't have the stormwater calculations and all that are not ready.
They're not quite ready.
Not quite done, yeah. So,
About a quarter to a third of the way done. I'm planning to have them done early next week for submission.
all right. So is there a motion to continue that matter to the March 4th meeting?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And the matter is continued.
Which one is that?
That's the first one, 7:45.
If I could have that, then put back in the
Yep. Sorry.
No, not a problem. Files. File is kind of
Mr. Ware, we are one commissioner short, but he's arriving, he should be here in 10, 15 minutes.
That's fine.
We
Well-
need him because Mr. Garner wasn't here at the first time
Right.
you were here, so we don't have the proper quorum if we go forward without him, but we do expect him, so
Okay.
instead of taking your matter next, I think we'll do some of these administrative ones.
Well, there is the proposal that possibly in the time allotted, that Mr. Weir could review and go through substance of his comments at the previous meeting, which would bring Commissioner Garner up to speed in regards to the status of his submittal.
Which we could do too. How would you prefer to proceed?
Well, I'm not doing anything.
We'd really like you to do something.
I was here for the initial
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
informal overview of the project, and I missed the next meeting.
Okay. So, Mr. Ware, what you're gonna need to cover is not the first time you came in, which was really very introductory, but
Yeah.
anything that you brought to our attention the last time you were here,
Yeah.
that wouldn't be included in your presentation today.
Sure.
So if you can just,
Yeah.
bring us up to date.
Yeah.
And then hopefully the missing commissioner will show up sometime in the middle of that, and we can proceed on that basis.
Sure. I think what I did was I walked through the history of the site. It was, this is the old, as everybody knows, this is the old McIntyre's clam shack. And the clam shack actually it's a funny bump in the road right there. That's where the clam shack used to actually, the front corner used to sit right there.
Right.
So they actually put the road out around there.
Had some sort of a strange concrete abutment there that went right out into the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the bank bought this. I forget the exact years to it, but the bank purchased the property. And it was this site was underwater in the Mother's Day flood. I think it was probably the only time in the history of since I've been doing this that I had to find a route around the site that I was representing before the Conservation Commission that night because it was underwater. I think it was the total for Raleigh ended up being I think it was over 14 inches in a 24-hour period, and to make matters worse, the beavers had this culvert had become completely blocked. So really the flood that occurred on that date was actually well above the 100-year flood, which we actually had done a study here and found that the 100-year flood was actually much lower. But those two conditions ended up resulting in a much higher flood elevation. But back in, I don't remember the years, 2006, 2007, around that frame, we did successfully get through this commission to put the bank on the site. The light gray area that you see here is now this is the parking lot. The cars come around and through. It's a drive-through, and I believe there's 14 parking spaces on the site. At that time, it was under the old stormwater management regs, and we were actually trying out LID things that weren't actually in the regs yet. And what we proposed was a water quality swale at this end of the site, and then a water quality swale around the edge. And that still is how things work today. The rainwater hits these, it's the impervious surfaces, and everything runs into these water quality swales. The bank was far more successful than they ever anticipated. We had worked through the 14 spaces, was what we thought was a suitable number of spaces. I think deposits are triple. I don't know what the numbers are, but I believe the deposits for this bank are triple what the bank had projected. So the business out of this bank is, it's a good problem to have in that it's been successful. We looked at a number of ways to try to expand this site without entering into the, this area, because the site was subject to a degraded riverfront area. The riverfront actually comes all the way up into here. And the site was part of a degraded riverfront area, so we were kind of tiptoeing along a line of how do we expand this while still respecting the total amount of riverfront area that was previously disturbed. And in the materials we presented, we broke down how much degraded there was within the 100 and the 200. And the numbers escaping right now, but suffice to say that two things really, I think, go towards the argument that this work should be allowed in the riverfront area. The first one is that from the 2006 condition, that we still have less impact on the riverfront area than there was in 2006. The second part is that we're below the 10% of total riverfront disturbed area, because this site is actually very large. This is only a small portion of the site. The riverfront actually continues on both sides. So we're under both of those criteria. We also provided for an alternatives analysis on where else could we park on this site, and we looked at parking on the abutting property. We actually were in negotiations with the abutter for a while, and we could not come to terms with them. We thought about maybe parking across the street, but we dismissed that pretty quickly. It's a very unsafe situation to have people crossing that street to get to work. We looked at the septic system is in this location, and we looked at bringing parking up in here. But when we started to look at that, there was a couple different ways, and we provided sketches with the NOI, and one of them actually came up with 10 parking spaces, but to get the 10 parking spaces, you lost 4. So there's only a net gain of 6. And then ultimately the drainage didn't work because we took up all the space and we couldn't. So we looked at all those alternatives, and ultimately we looked at this and said, you know, if we squeeze down the swale that's in here and increase the drainage in this area, and I'll get into a little bit more detail on that we could, you know, utilize the existing lane which exists here and put in 14 new parking spaces without a, you know, as you can see, it's not as if we're tripling the amount of impervious surface or anything on the site. I think it's only, you know, maybe a 5 to 10% increase of impervious surface. So that was the idea. And that's what we've presented here. And the BMPs, because there's been a change in the DEP stormwater management regulations since, I think it was 2008, late 2008, I think they came in. And the great thing about them was they gave much more specificity in the BMPs as well as LID techniques. But what we did the BMPs we've had is we're still allowing for runoff to run into a water quality swale, which is in this location. But we've then expanded this basin. This is basically an infiltration basin. We also have a sediment forebay to another water quality swale to get treatment into that infiltration basin. So we've traded off the old BMPs for the new BMPs, and these BMPs are also designed. You know, we're bringing most of the site into under the 2009 regs. There is still a water quality swale on this end of the site, because this side of the site does drain into that. We're not touching that, so we're kind of considering that half of the site to fall under the redevelopment provisions of the DEP stormwater standards. But the balance of the site is in full compliance. Actually, I think the site is in full compliance with Mass DEP standards. I think that's pretty close to the presentation I gave last time. One of the issues, I think, moving into, is it all right to move into presentation?
Yeah, sure.
I think
you're right.
I think an issue that came up that night was that we were dancing probably a little too close to this area right here. Is a fence around this area. That area was a riverfront mitigation or replication area, and that site's been planted out with a lot of specificity towards plantings that provide for habitat along the edge of the edge of that river and that river habitat. We took great pains of placing wire fence around that because it's actually right on the plan. The beaver hut is right there. We had concerns about about the beavers going up and making a meal out of that area, but we've been successful. I think the area is doing very, very well. I think the beavers are still there. The beaver deceiver is still there, which we installed as part of this project. So, 5 years down the line, everything seems to be operating the way it was seen. I think Brent, and I'm not sure how this actually played out. I know he was in contact with DEP, and I think that the feeling was if you're going to touch that riverfront area, you're going to have very good support for how you're meeting the provisions of the requirements for the performance standards for a riverfront area. So what we did was we took a harder look at this and just took more care to show that. When I immediately, when Brent brought that to my attention, I said, well, our intention is not to touch that area. And so what we did is we went back to the drawing board. I think we just fine-tuned our work around that line and provided for a clear kind of a 1 to 2 foot space along that fence, showing that we're not touching that riverfront area at all. And we followed that up with a site walk, April 4 hour from my office, walked with Brent, and I just found it today. I saw that. I guess Kurt was there as well, and so we went through that process, and then more recently, Brent had raised at the meeting the idea of how we're going to. It's really, I don't know if you can call it phasing the construction steps. The issue of where we would be stockpiling. The way I see this working is. This area is currently all loam and seeded. And see, the very first step of this is going to be to strip that loam and seed, and we'll stockpile right in this area. Now, some of that loam will leave the site because we're going to have pavement coming in, so that volume of loam would leave the site. So that would be the first step: strip this back. The second step would be to shape up and form and shape this basin, and also even this swale up to the point where the stockpile is. Once that is shaped, then that loam material can be screened and then reestablished along that, and even you would shape up the rest of that swale at that time. At that point, where the gravel is going, where the pavement is going, we would start trucking in gravel and just immediately spreading and compacting that. So that would never be stockpiled on the site. That would be brought in, compacted, and then lastly, this would be paved.
When you say that, you mean the gravel would not be stockpiled?
The gravel wouldn't be stockpiled. It would be that would be just be trucked in, immediately spread and compacted, and then this would be paved. And then the last step. Now the bank, we didn't specify it last time. We just specified hydroseeding. But the last time the bank actually sodded these areas, I don't know if the bank would. It probably depends on. I think had to do with the time of year. It was going to get sodded, or it was going to be a kind of a muddy mess for for many months. So I think it depends on the time. If it's in the spring, it'll probably just be a matter of seeding it. So that's kind of those are the steps, and certainly that's not on the plan right now. Brent in his letter has suggested some silt fence in addition to the erosion control we have there. We have no issue with that. We agree that that would be a good thing to do. There was some other recommendations that I just read those tonight that Brent had. There was some issues of rock salt. I apologize for referencing the rock salt in my O&M. It's boilerplate. There was an oversight on our part that we should have removed that. But we can certainly take care of the items that Brent was so good to provide us with on that, and hope that this commission might consider closing the hearing tonight and issuing that order. So, and if there's questions, I'd be happy to field those.
If I may just note for the record that Commissioner DeMonico arrived at 8:02 p.m. So we have an operational quorum for consideration of your request.
So, from your comments, Mr. Weir, I take it you've read Brent's memo dated February 11th?
I actually got the email on the
Oh,
way
that's right.
here.
On the way here.
I actually rented it. I read it in the parking lot just before I came in.
Very
But that's fine. It was they were all things that Brent had discussed
Yeah.
with
Yeah,
our office
okay.
beforehand.
No,
So
actually, no. I just,
Well,
I just discovered the rock salt.
the rock salt
I-
was the new one, yeah. But
So-
most of the rest.
But the
yeah.
rock salt, it's just a matter of rewording.
It's just pulling it out of a report
Yeah,
and
okay.
resubmitting it.
Yeah, gotcha.
Well, my suggestion, though, is a little more comprehensive because there was an operations and maintenance plan with the original order of conditions that ended up being adopted and stipulated as being an ongoing condition. I think instead of having two kind of, I hate to use the word conflicting, but instead of allowing confusion to reign by having a plan that still applies to the portion of the site that doesn't have this proposed project on it, and then another plan that does apply to this new configuration of the stormwater facilities, that it would be best to create, to hybridize or whatever, or to meld them together.
Yeah, is
So
one
there's just
document.
one operations and maintenance
That's easily
plan.
That makes sense.
They're very similar.
And we would
documents.
still, I mean, it's still going to be our practice to condition that be an ongoing condition, that the inspection, maintenance, and other obligations that are in that plan apply to the site. But
Sure.
I think in terms of your site management and operations department, I think it would be better not to have two different documents sitting on it. Lots of
My
times it-
apologies, it
I
was
agree.
Kim Rock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's
Okay.
with
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Does it to you?
No, I agree. I agree.
Okay,
Why
great.
fool around with two documents? Just
Right.
have a single document.
It's a single site. So.
Right.
The two documents actually we used, the new document, we used the old document
Sure.
as the base, and then we added some new language that came from the new stormwater management regs. So I think the new document's pretty close, so we should just take a minute and compare them one last time.
Well, yeah, so that's why, in a sense, I'm suggesting to the commission, we're gonna put the onus on you.
Yep, that's fine.
First off, because of that conflict that arose with it just talking about,
Rock salt.
it didn't actually say rock salt, what it said was road salt. But
Yeah.
that's, when you say road salt, that's what people go
Right,
for, it's the
right.
sodium chloride.
Right,
So,
right.
And
It's the potassium.
And I checked that, you know, the previous order of conditions had specifically prohibited that, and we usually put a clause in there that there's more environmentally,
Right.
they still have the chloride in them, but it's calcium chloride or magnesium chloride, and they're considered more environmentally benign and
Right,
not as damaging as a sodium chloride.
correct.
It usually does involve a slight increase in cost for ice preventive measures, but it still is considered that, you know, in the interest of public safety and operational safety, that they can still be utilized and achieve the goal of having vehicles have traction while they're on your site. But
Sure.
it is an obligation that if you do utilize outside contractors, or if you've got specific division or department within your organization that takes care of your plowing and sanding, that they need to know that restriction exists.
No problem.
Because I do remember that there was a discussion originally, in many cases, we do require signage put up. There was a discussion that was felt that was going to be a detriment to the aesthetics of the development of your facility, and I think we were told that most of the operations and maintenance is taken care of internally, that you're not hiring gypsies that go down the road and say, come plow me for $20 here or something.
What do you gotta get gypsies?
That's not really the style of the institution for savings, in my experience. Okay. So, commissioners, any questions about today's presentation?
No, it's just that I think that all commissioners present are now eligible to vote.
Yes, I think that is right.
Should-
Yeah. So no questions by commissioners. Anything else you want to add, Brad?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask now, this particular expansion is before the planning board? Is it
That's
as a
correct.
site plan, a modification to the site plan?
It's a
or
modified site plan special permit. I believe.
Is there going to be a technical review of your stormwater?
Larry is nearing his completion. I talked to him actually. I ran into him last night. He said he didn't have any major issues.
Okay, so I just wanted to find out whether we should, pause for a little bit, if there's going to be something. But I would imagine any change that might come forward would not be a substantial
I would
change in the
hope that was the
scope.
case, and if there is an issue, we'll come back to this board. But like I said, I talked to him last night, and he led me to believe that they had actually completed reviewing the plans already, which is 99% of this, and that there were no major issues, was the way he said it to me.
Okay.
So,
Well, I think with that in mind, if the commission just, again, since we're looking for some revised documents and stuff, if we just also, without holding up permit issuance, but also just put out there the obligation that if there is revisions to the calculations or whatever, that we receive a revised set so that it can become part
of the record.
of
sure.
our
And
permit
that
record.
should play into, you have 21 days to issue. Larry, I think, is going to be done, today's the 10th. The plan board meets on the 26th, and Larry, although he led me to believe it was going to be done by tonight, but then when I ran into him last night, he was not talking about tonight anymore. He was asking when the planning board meeting was. So I believe I'm going to have the review done by him within the next 2 weeks.
Okay. Well, I did
So-
recommend 14 days to get revisions to us.
You gotta make a
Right.
couple of revisions anyway.
Yeah,
Minor
so
ones.
I'll go ahead and do those revisions, and I'll
Okay.
try to strong arm Larry a little bit to get.
Well,
through it.
again, I don't think it well, I was trying not to have it hold us up initially.
Right.
I don't see that we need to. I think we can close the hearing, assuming we vote for it, and issue the order of conditions, conditioned upon plan revisions and upon approval by the planning board without major
Right.
calculations,
Okay.
major changes or significant, let's say, significant changes in the.
Right, well, it's really only that technical review.
Yes.
I really wouldn't hinge it upon a planning board
No,
decision,
no, no.
because they may
Word
go
it
into
that way.
something else.
Yeah, no, they, whatever they're reviewing, the only thing we care about is that part of it,
Yeah,
the
that's
technical
fine.
review.
That's fine.
Because there's other aspects to this, right? There's a second story being added and things that
And
don't
that's been
affect us.
approved.
Okay.
That was approved, so
Right. So
that's.
that's already been done.
Right.
Okay.
What was hinging, interestingly enough, what their decision was that, although really the bank wasn't thinking about hiring, now, certainly this will open the door. What they did was they told us that we could put the addition on, but they put in a condition that until such time as the parking lot was expanded, that we were not allowed to increase the staff. I don't think there's any plans to, right now, the staff that's in there there's people sharing offices, and we just don't have enough space for the employees that are there. Now, will they hire 1 or 2 extra people once they have the space? Possibly.
Okay.
But the plan is not as if we're gonna double or triple the staff
Right.
somehow. It's really just to provide parking that we desperately need right now, so.
All right, any other comments by commissioners, members of the public? Anything else, Brent, you want to add? So I would need a motion to close the hearing and issue an order of conditions typical for a commercial parking lot expansion, conditioned upon filing of the revisions to the plans as discussed within 14 days, and with the language we were just talking about regarding technical review by planning board and Mr. Graham.
Sure.
Do I have a motion?
Well, as well as ongoing conditions for Zone 2.
Well, yeah, typical for a
Yeah.
commercial parking lot expansion. Yeah, okay, right, I left out that phrase. Together with ongoing conditions reflecting the location within a Zone 2 groundwater area, right? It's always going to be true on this site. Okay, so do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
And is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and all against, and the motion carries, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
although she'd be interested.
For about 10 minutes.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Well, that one.
I got lots of plans she could color.
That was a nice colorful thing. She knows where it is. She's been by it.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right, Mr. Ford, you're next. Just let us finish up the paperwork here.
Thank you.
Did you see Brent's memo?
I have not.
Okay, yeah, take it off.
Thank you.
Short and sweet, but it's over here. Thank you. You ready?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. This is the 815 item, a new request for an extension to the order of condition 630471 for 272 Weathersfield Street, map 23, parcels 19, 19A, 19B, 23, 38, and 39, Wild Pasture LLC for 1 year. So this is the, I think this is the 5th extension you guys have requested.
Yes, it is. This should be this will be the last, because he's got, basically what the plan is to finish up one more house lot that he has left out there.
Okay.
And then do all the paving and the final paving and curbing and sidewalks and all that this summer and fall, and hopefully get this in for street acceptance for next spring town meeting.
Good. Good.
That raised the question in my mind that the original plans, I think, for this and the road that goes in off of Route 1 showed a connection between those two properties. Is that going to be opened up?
I believe once the roads are accepted, it will be opened up. I think that was what the approval was through the planning board.
Yeah, they got Jersey barriers,
That's
a
what I
couple of
remember.
Jersey barriers
Yeah.
sitting there right now, but
Yeah.
there is base.
There's pavement out through to Spencer Knoll.
Spencer Knoll, right, yeah. So that happens at the point that the roads are finished.
Correct.
Okay. That makes sense?
You say accepted, you mean accepted in town?
Town meeting acceptance, yeah.
How many homes do you have up in there
31, 32, something like that.
with one to go?
He has, Mr. George Alakis owns one more lot that he's gonna build on this spring. And there's one other empty lot that another separate entity owns, and that's it. Actually, I'm sorry, he has two lots that he owns.
So 3 in all.
So it's
That
3 in
don't
all
have
to be
houses yet.
finished.
But his plan is to do the streets this summer.
Yeah, he wanted to get it done this past fall, but just couldn't quite swing it, so that's the plan for this summer.
Well, there don't appear to be any issues at the site, right, Brent? Site is in good shape, so. So it's just a 1-year extension, though. It's all we can do at this point, right?
Right, well,
That's
it's
all
our
they're
normal policy, and that's what they asked for, and
Yep.
it's-
Yep. Okay.
everything's fine.
So, any comments by commissioners? Any other questions besides Kurt's? In that case, is there a motion to grant a 1-year extension to the issued order 63-471 to set the new expiration date to be February 24, 2015? Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and all against. Very good.
Thank
Thank you, Mr. Ford.
Thanks.
What's the point of the Permit Extension Act permitting all this and as amended to go out for 4 years? We could, I assume we would have the power to extend beyond that if we so choose. chose to do so. That just allowed you to do, I assume, a 4-year at one time.
Well,
Don't
the
necessarily
4
expect-
years is what the Permit Extension Act, 2 years first, and then it was amended and threw on another 2 years.
Well, we've had this conversation.
The commission has the discretion, if they wish to extend an order for longer than a year, but I've always recommended since day one in working with the commission that first off, applying for an extension is not overly burdensome. It gives the commission a chance to weigh in on whether the status of the project, whether they're keeping their erosion control up, whether they're maintaining their stormwater system, whether you've got any other types of concerns. The other thing is whether the regulations change. There could be a regulatory change that might throw into question as to whether what they built is actually, like say stormwater, like whether it's actually accomplishing the removal that it was intended to remove. There's a number of reasons just to kind of weigh in. It's sort of like getting your car, taking it to the mechanic for preventative maintenance.
I don't have
at
a
least
problem
once a
with any of
year.
that. In fact, I think I was, before you became agent, I think I was trying to specify that we only do things for 1 year. My question is, it's not that, it's if there is a 4-year extension and they've gone up to the 4 years, is there anything that prohibits us from doing a 5th and a 6th year?
Well, we just did a 5th. And no, they could come back and they could ask us for another year extension. And as long as the commission is willing to grant extensions, I'm not aware. I mean, technically the regulations from DEP do say that, although here again, there's wiggle room. They talk about an order of conditions being issued for 3 years, and then that the commission has the ability to extend that order for another cumulative 3 years. But then you can also find a reference where it talks about that in special circumstances, and it says right on the order of condition permit, that you could initially issue it for 5 years, but then is silent as to whether then you still get the possible 3 years of further extensions later on, making it an 8-year duration order of conditions. So from all I know or whatever, as long as you believe the property owner is in compliance with their issued permit and they come and ask you for an extension, I think that's the best, most open way to do it, especially if they record the extension, so then anybody looking to buy into the project knows that it's being actively extended and the permit's valid and stuff. I mean, it's sort of a check-in thing that also then accomplishes in a document being recorded, which I think in this day and age also becomes a worthwhile endeavor for people searching titles to properties and stuff. They know that it's got a valid permit on it.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to Mr. DeCoulis's matter here. 8:30 item, new request for partial certificate of compliance, 6342, 15 Emily Lane, map 9, parcel 23, lot 31. Applicant is Daniel Davison of BSD Construction. Mr. DeCoulis, have you seen?
Yes,
the
I
memo?
have, yeah.
Okay. All right. All right, Mr. DeCoulis, what would you like to add?
Well,
Tell us.
we're requesting a partial release
Yeah.
because the property is under a purchase and sales agreement.
Yeah.
And we've been unable to do any field work due to the heavy snow cover. And I don't know the day of the closing, but I think it's shooting for maybe a month from now. And it's gonna be a while before we can get out there to do any field work.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. We could have a warm spell and you could, but you can't schedule closings around snowstorms, so is a partial certificate contingent upon receipt of ownership information and noting those conditions have not been established? Is that going to be satisfactory for purposes of
Right,
closing?
yes, yeah.
Because I don't think there's anything else we can do with
I
this.
know, yeah, that's right.
Is there anything you want to add, Brent, to your memo?
Well, just that,
You can't see it, so.
no, I can't see it, but some of the things I can see do indicate that there is a condition of non-compliance out
Right.
there. The deck is supposed to have a crushed stone area underneath it. It does not. The two discharging downspouts on the rear corner of the house do not appear to discharge into any type of crushed stone trench or anything along the foundation.
And that's these two? That's what you're, this one and this one?
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
this one and this one?
No.
It's the same one.
No, surprisingly enough, there is pea stone down in the front of the house. There's pea stone along here. It's a landscape with pea stone, and these downspouts do discharge onto the pea stone. But at the rear of the house, and actually the picture with the deck gives you a better idea that it's bark mulch. And the snow cover was light enough along the sides of the house that I could see that it just appeared to be bark mulch all along the whole rear of the dwelling.
So this is
So
the
that
rear,
is,
so
that does appear to be contrary. Now, granted, where you see this one discharging towards the side, and I could not see what's underneath there, that was all frozen as well as embedded in the ice from the downpipe. Maybe there's crushed stone under there, but for this one portion of the property where I could see the ground, it appeared that there might be an issue and there might have to be some further work once things thaw out of actually putting crushed stone trench in there. And so, because otherwise, those downspouts are just sort of erode away any of the bark mulch, wood chips that's there, and just take it down the slope, as you see from the...
It's pretty sloped.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can definitely see from the pictures, especially the ones I took of the deck, standing back there, that there's quite a slope there. So I'm not confident that wood chips is a stable surface treatment for that area.
Yep.
So,
Okay. But again, we can't really, I mean, you can't do much about that until the conditions improve.
right.
Or they can't. So.
And it really only adds to the fact that we can only say that the dwelling has been constructed.
Right.
The septic system's in, because I believe the Board of Health has issued a certificate of compliance for the site. We know the driveway's in, but basically, really, all final grading, we can't tell if that's been entirely accomplished. We can't tell if there's any type of vegetative cover or stabilizing cover. We cannot tell really about any of the stormwater infrastructure, except for that pea stone that I can see at the front of the house, but that's probably only 5% of the stormwater system.
Right.
The basin, the trench along the edge of the driveway, the fact that the driveway is supposed to be sloped, all those types of
There
things.
appears to be a basin, you could see that
Well, yeah, there's a
little bit-
depression there, but
there's a
yeah.
depression, but
But who knows? That may just be because that was the original level of the surface too, because it was filled for the driveway. So, all those things that Mr. DeCoulis, in his efforts to establish an as-built plan, would be providing some verification to. So really, it's going to have to be between the buyer and seller are going to have to kind of figure things out here, because we really can't attest
Right.
to too much compliance,
Right.
if I can use
and
that.
I'm not sure he'd be able to put the gravel until the ground thaws out.
Well, right. I mean,
You know, that might be late March.
well, exactly. I mean, really, we normally would not want any site work to occur at this time of year, just
Right.
because the conditions are so adverse to it actually being stable.
Right, right. You want to leave it frozen. It's better off that way.
I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if this is the correct way to phrase it, but, you know, if the commission in their wisdom issue a partial certificate of compliance, this is gonna be like the smallest partial certificate of compliance we've ever issued.
Well, how would it be worded so that all parties would be on notice as to what's partial and what's
Oh, well, it,
non-partial?
pretty much, I can tell you right now, since I just kind of followed what we'd done on the last one, but just had to,
Right.
obviously, so we would declare a partial certification. It is hereby certified that only the following portions of work regulated by the above referenced order of conditions have been satisfactorily completed. The project areas or work subject to this partial certification that have been completed and are released from this order are rough site grading, comma, dwelling, comma, driveway, comma, and sewage disposal system completed. But no cut markers, comma, engineer's letter and as-built plan, comma, stormwater basin, comma, stabilization, comma, full vegetative cover, comma, and removal of erosion controls not complete.
What about the mention of the things that aren't, the crushed stone that isn't there?
That is covered in the stabilization and in the stormwater. That's all aspects of the stormwater system.
Well, if I were a buyer, I wouldn't know that.
Well, you could, I suppose you could add some more
Um,
language about that.
Well,
It's kind of, I mean, it's hard to know what to add though, because we
Right.
don't know if it's there.
well,
In some
as,
cases, for instance, it could be, where's the right picture here?
Well, I don't think Mr. Davison would mind, you know, if you did put it in and it was there.
Yeah.
there is an ongoing condition sheet which I could add, sort of like we've done in the past, with like a findings section that just copies over the same statements from my memo.
Yeah,
That expound, to give a little more specificity to some of these things.
so you could say, the area of the stormwater basin being snow covered is state is unknown. I think that would put anybody on notice that they may have work to do. Same thing for the existence or non-existence of the infiltration trench.
Right.
So, because your point is, you're trying to make sure this buyer has fair notice. I would imagine there's gonna be some kind of a holdback between.
Oh, yeah, right,
To deal with
right.
it, so it won't get ignored.
So I
Is that
think,
satisfactory to you, Craig?
Yeah, I guess what triggered this, the deck, underneath the deck doesn't have a crushed stone bed underneath it.
Right, but you're gonna reference that, just like you did in.
well, I'll just copy the points out of the memo that are deficiency, and I'll just, above the ongoing conditions section, I'll just have a findings section and say, you know, field inspection revealed, and then just.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good.
And then you'll have a list of what needs verification.
Right.
Well, again, I'm gonna take what I listed out from right there,
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
It's basically.
because I think I listed it out.
Yeah, you got it all done.
Oh, it's all
You just
here.
gotta,
Right.
Format it.
4 through 10
Right.
of your field inspection notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, all too often in the past, we've seen buyers say, well, you know,
Yeah, I didn't even,
thought it was up to speed.
well, Mr. Davison's not gonna get the last chunk of his money until it gets done, is how this usually works out, so he'll be in touch.
Well, we can only issue the partial certificate of compliance with as much,
Right.
you know, specificity as we can, and trust that within their process, both parties are gonna see this.
Right. All right, so do I have a motion to issue a partial certificate of compliance with the above listed ongoing
Discuss
conditions?
findings section.
Plus, the findings section just discussed, also need receipt of ownership information, don't forget that one.
Well, I'm not gonna release
Right.
that to them.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess just as discussed.
So moved.
Okay. And second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, see you March 4th, and hopefully, yeah.
Right. Good night.
Good night.
Bring some warm weather.
Brings us to the end of the agenda items.
You may want to revise the,
Yeah, go ahead.
you may want Brent to put the word partial in there. What's on the agenda and that. I know you do later
Well, actually, there's a reason for doing that.
on. Okay?
Because it's not up to me in my infinite wisdom to predispose that the commission is actually going to issue a partial or not, or issue anything or not. And so actually there's actually a reason why I do it that way, so that I don't show any bias or demonstrate any bias in telling the commission how to vote.
So
Now,
you-
actually, the applicant's
application-
engineer
Yeah.
asked for a partial.
Well, in that case, you could have done it this time. You could have put partial in, 'cause
I-
that's
I-
all that was asked for.
I could have, but it's actually better, more professional to just list it as a certificate of compliance request and then let the commission make the decision on the information submitted. To be quite honest with you, I called up the person I seek advice from in DEP's Northeast Regional Office a lot, and she goes, "Oh, don't issue them anything. They haven't gotten near enough stuff done." And I said, I think I can understand what's going on here, and I don't exactly concur with your opinion, because I think they're trying to sell this place and they want to at least have the buyer know that something under the order has been done. And you're looking at a house which is all in the buffer zone, so it's kind of hard to say, well, they haven't done anything.
And, you know, the house has an occupancy permit, or it will. It has a functioning septic system. It has a
Right.
driveway. It has,
Yeah, it has the
There's no
normal,
reason.
the normal things that you would expect a dwelling.
we can't take
Now
the
that it's
position
there.
that nobody can close on a house in the wintertime.
Well,
That's not-
or that the whole liability of the complete order of conditions is still sitting out there waiting
Right.
to be accomplished. That's-
What led me to raise that question is because your agenda says new request for partial certificate of compliance.
So
Well,
that's-
right, and that's because when I got
That's what he
Mr.
said.
DeCoulis's letter, yeah, but
Okay.
when I produce a memo for you folks, I don't want to show necessarily particular bias.
All right, so what do we have for permits and enforcement?
Oh, well, we actually, we've got some different things which aren't necessarily categorized as enforcement.
Let's put a cease and desist on whoever it is that didn't give us notice of that gas station thing. I mean, how many years does that go back?
Well,
Want to start with that one?
no, actually, I wanted to start with a more positive one. Okay.
I was afraid my computer was gonna blow up. I saw what you had as an attachment, so I closed it right up. Anyway, okay, yeah, what, take it in the order you want.
The selectman's office passed on a phone call that they had received from a property owner whose parents owned a 3-acre parcel of salt marsh, which is situated between Main Street and Kittery Avenue. It's actually sort of out there in the marsh, halfway between those two streets, behind where the Murins have their horse farm, but a little bit north of that. And so the selectman's office received a phone call saying that somebody was interested in possibly donating this parcel of salt marsh that their parents had owned, but that their will had not been probated and would need to be probated before the property could be conveyed. So I called, the lady's name is Nancy Salemi, and her parents, apparently her mother was the last surviving parent, was Sophie Egantis, and who they apparently originally had owned a lot of the land off of Kittery Avenue on either side there, I guess, at some point in time. I guess they were a long time farming family here in Raleigh. I believe their last residence is where currently Sue Bailey and her husband, I don't know, his last name is Hardy. But anyway, Sue Bailey, who's our accountant, and her husband, where Kittery Ave ends and Fennel Drive comes in, and if you follow Kittery Avenue, it goes through a gate and goes into one of Conley's fields that they farm on the slopes of the hill there. But anyway, so obviously down gradient from that out in Salt Marsh. So I requested that, I was told to, because this is just verbally on the phone, I was told to talk with Mrs. Salemi and request a note from her demonstrating, the offer. So I called her up, and she was very nice to chat with, and provided a note dated February 3rd to the commission. I am requesting permission as power of attorney for Sophie Agantis, formerly of Raleigh, to discuss the possibility of donating a piece of property located off of Main Street, known as map 31 parcel 10, I told her the assessor's thing because it didn't have an address, to the Conservation Commission. Thank you, Nancy Sloan. And she currently resides in North Andover. She told, and again, she had alerted me that the property hadn't been, or before it could be donated, it needed to have her mother's will probated, and that her attorney had told her it would cost $2,000. So now that I had the written note, I requested permission from Debbie Egan, Town Administrator, to seek advice from Town Council. And this is a memo to the Commission from Judy Pickett, Town Council, in regards to this offer. So it's dated February 11th, and I'll just read it to enter it into the record. Donation of Salt Marsh area / estate of Sophie Agantis. The town has been offered a 3-acre parcel of salt marsh in exchange for undertaking the probate of the will of Sophie Agantis, or payment of $2,000 for someone to undertake the probate of her will, period. The town cannot undertake probate work of a private citizen or pay for the probate of an estate in exchange for a gift of land, period. Although the end result may be the donation of 3 acres of salt marsh to the town, the probate work is not a municipal public purpose for which municipal funds may be expended, period. Probating an estate could take a year or longer, and it is not clear until there is a final accounting whether any land may in fact be given as a gift to the town. You have told me that the land in question is bordered by salt marsh areas owned by the state and Essex County Greenbelt Association. You could refer the party who offered the gift to contact those entities to see if there is any interest on the part of the state, presumably Fish and Game or Essex County Greenbelt Association, in acquiring the land.
Anybody can do a probate, right? You don't need to be an attorney to probate a will. But she may be elderly and she may not.
Right.
Well, no.
It's complicated.
Sophie Agantis has departed, has passed away.
Right.
And I'm making an assumption that Miss Salemi is probably somewhere near my age or so, kind of based on sort of what I get a sense in talking to her. So I'm not gonna name any ages because I don't wanna get into that, embarrass anybody on.
Well, is she specifically tying the gift to, of saying that, you know,
Well, it has to
that if
be.
we'd paid for it, that.
Apparently it has to be because she has some other siblings who, again, she verbally related would be amenable to this. But apparently this is a major asset that must need to be probated. I mean, I'm going on shaky ground here. Anyway.
Here's the thing, if, the only thing I might suggest you call Nancy Celine back, and just, maybe it already is clear, but it's not clear from her note that Sophie Agonis is actually deceased. Because she says, as power of attorney for Sophie Agonis. You can't have a power of attorney for a deceased person.
Yeah.
Well, okay, that's my fault.
Okay.
That's my fault because I just said to her, I said, well, is there something,
Yeah.
okay. How do you come to be making this offer or whatever?
And she said her mother was.
And she said, well, I had power of attorney.
Right, she
Okay.
did when she was
Yeah,
alive.
so no, her mother had passed away over 3 years ago.
Okay. So if her
So
mother
I do
were
know that for
alive,
sure.
that she dealt with us while her mother was alive, because it would be easy, she could have just given us a deed. Since she's dead, and assuming that she did not own it in joint names with her children, which would have been also a smart way to handle it. Assuming she just owned it alone, there's no way to do that except probate. So, and Judy, I think she's right, Judy Pickett is right, we can't.
Well, I provided Judy with the deed that is referenced on
Okay.
it, and yeah, it just mentions Felix Agontis and Sophie A. Agontis,
Okay.
husband and wife by tenants entirety.
Yep, so Sophie owned it when she died, so the only way to transfer title now is through a probate, so.
Are there any tax revenues associated with that property?
Would somebody else pay for it?
I don't know, I hadn't gotten that far. I, again, didn't want to put an awful lot of time into this, especially where there was this outstanding question when I first, and I mentioned to Doug, when I first heard the thing about, probating it, I thought, ooh, okay, that's a town council question, and before I do anything else.
Right.
I actually agree with council's suggestion to, since there's other protected land abutting it, and where we recently know that Fish and Game has been very actively seeking salt marsh parcels to protect, I would like the commission to tell me to direct, if not, at least provide the contact information for both entities, to at least provide the contact information for Miss Ann Gagnon. And,
Sure. But also Greenbelt, and for that matter.
Yes, you would have to do both.
They're all,
right.
Certainly
maybe,
not single
I mean,
one.
they're private, well, two of them are private nonprofit entities, they might consider it worth.
Audubon doesn't have any abutting land there,
Yeah.
so I have a feeling that actually Audubon would, once they found out Greenbelt had an abutting parcel, that
They
they
probably, yeah, I would imagine. But Greenbelt might think it was worth spending a few $1,000s to get
Right.
what is it, 3 acres?
3 acres.
And
Yeah.
it's their land, so it's worth a lot
Right
more.
up
but,
against this.
Right. Maybe they would, and they're under no constraint, they can spend their funds however they want to,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think that's probably the only thing we can do.
Well, it's clear we can't do anything.
No, we can't do anything.
Yeah.
And I would think that their problem is that this is the only asset. Because if there were other assets that needed to be probated, they'd go ahead and do it, so they could
Right.
liquidate them.
Yeah.
So probably won't get done. Just to call up all their brothers and sisters and say, we all gotta put in $500 each to get this done. Well, let's say, what's in it for me? And the answer is nothing really, so.
Maybe Greenbelt might be willing to have their attorneys probate it for nothing.
Yeah, well, I mean, somebody, correct.
Either way, someone that doesn't have the same
Right.
restrictions on the expenditure of funds that the municipality has
Right.
needs to be involved in this, I think.
So why don't you give Nancy Salemi a call back and do that? That makes sense to
It
everybody.
does, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to be helpful, that's all we can do. certainly like to see it protected, and everything being equal. Not that it's developable, but.
Correct. Yeah, but again, it would, so from that standpoint,
Who else
You know,
about here? You were telling me before. It's not all.
It's on this one.
We wrote it in on this one.
Yeah.
Rebuilt Commonwealth.
Yeah, so SD Trust is over here, but the Commonwealth is both here, as well as I believe the Commonwealth just gained this property right here, which is actually why,
it's actually why I thought of them when I saw that they were kind of not only on the other side of the river or stream there, that they were actually a direct abutter as well as Greenbelt. I thought, well, gee, maybe they would. And like I said, since we recently know that they're right now in the process of buying a tax title parcel of salt marsh from the town of Raleigh, I know they're actively interested in salt marsh properties.
Okay. All right.
What were they paying Raleigh for that?
Just 24,000.
Yeah, that's what sticks in my mind, if they're willing to pay 24,000 for.
That was like $1,000 an acre, because I think it was a 24-acre parcel.
It's a big piece. but
Certainly ought to
it's,
be willing to cough up 2,000 to do this.
Oh, well, and here again, well, the parcel nearby, I understand they just did a friendly eminent domain taking of, so,
Who, Raleigh?
no, the state.
Oh,
So,
how does the state do it, eminent domain? Why?
I wonder if they could, well, that's their problem. They could do that. with
there's
it.
some legal issues, I know.
Yeah.
Yes, eminent domain and
Okay.
friendly, an oxymoron?
No, not necessarily. I mean, these people would like to give it to the state. Maybe
Yeah,
that's
that's
the
true.
cheap way to
Yeah,
do
that's
it.
true.
And just,
Right.
you know, start an eminent domain proceeding, they don't oppose it. For $1 or whatever.
Yeah. But, anyway.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Might be
I'll,
cheaper.
Yeah.
I'll communicate our
Keep an eye on
appreciation
it.
and provide the contact information for those other parties
Okay, good.
to them. So, okay. So that was a positive note, so, okay. I'll get into the soil contamination.
Yes.
So, 165 Newburyport Turnpike.
Veterans Mobile.
Veterans Mobile, or Route 1 Realty, or now Raleigh Dash Exchange is the branch of Noonan's that I believe is operating the petroleum station. I believe it's still owned by Route 1 Realty, but I'm not exactly sure who they are.
Oh, I see a Bridgewater address on that.
Well, yes, that's
And then Noonan's,
Noonan's mothership or whatever I believe is in Bridgewater, I think. Their office complex or whatever, I think. Yeah, this kind of, this came to my attention in a funny way. I actually had received a call from one of the employees of Fuss and O'Neill, who's a licensed site professional firm, a Mary Britton, and she contacted the office last Wednesday and wanted to know the location, had understood that some irrigation wells were located relatively near 165 Newburyport Turnpike, and was told to call the Conservation Department because lo and behold, yes, we knew exactly where they were. Not for the best reasons either, but anyway.
He's the banks?
Hmm?
Are these the banks irrigation wells?
They are here.
No, I'm terribly sorry. The irrigation well that Mr. John Coughlin allowed to be positioned just south of the UPS building on, and that parcel's kind of funny. It's actually one large parcel that has the yogurt place, UPS place in one building, and then has Swanson's Granite in another location. That is all one big parcel that's owned by whatever realty trust Mr. Coughlin is one of the trustees in. I think it's the Gateway.
Gateway 1 or something.
Gateway
one
1,
of those.
Gateway 2, whatever. So anyway, so yes, so we know there's that one irrigation well, and the other well was sunk at 406 Haverhill Street, which is across from the ball field, which is the building that we had an order, we still have an open order of conditions that should be sought to be closed. And we had all the monitoring wells and testing and stuff done over there, and they asked permission to put an irrigation well in, which they did right near where the driveway entrance is in the grassed area.
No, that's now owned by a roofing company.
Well, they're a tenant. They don't own it, they're just a
Coughlin
tenant.
still owns it.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, nowhere in the conversation was I told that the reason for asking where these wells were was because there had been a petroleum release a year ago at 165 Newburyport Turnpike, or what we all know as Veterans Mobile. I didn't discover that until I went home, and I can't remember whether it was Friday or Saturday or even Sunday. One of the weekend globes that I looked at had this ad in it that said, "Notice of initial site investigation in Tier 1 permit application." And I'm like, what? And then I look, because big bold letters, 165 Newburyport Turnpike, and I'm like, wait, hold it, someone's just asking me about that. What do you mean? And it turns out that one of the lines from their underground tank to one of their pumps had leaked last February. So
the next time an LSP calls you
well,
and starts asking about.
well, I didn't know that they were an LSP,
irrigation
to
wells,
be honest
you know
with you
something's
either.
wrong.
I mean, they just called me up and said, you know, their name and who they worked for. They didn't say, I'm doing this and I have the credentials
No,
of an
they
LSP.
won't say that.
So, I mean, for all I knew, Fuss and O'Neill was either an attorney outfit or a realtor, for all I know. But anyway, the point here is that under the mass contingency plan, when you have a release of product and an issue of contamination, you're only legally required to notify the Selectman's office and the Board of Health. Neither of those two departments at the time happened to pass along.
Really? Were they notified, as far as you can tell?
As far as I can tell.
They were.
Yeah. One of those documents I sent you a PDF of, I think the April report that had all the testing and stuff, notes that it was electronically sent to the Board of Health, to the Health Department. And of course, the Water Department has kind of changed staff, so we honestly don't know whether any of the previous people employed there a year ago knew about this or not, but we obviously didn't. And again, they're not required to notify us. I only got a little bit interested in it because it said they'd excavated the soil and hauled it away. And the other kind of distressing thing is that the regulations in Massachusetts allow them to take a year to then work up what they call this comprehensive action plan. And so they're just getting around now. And the other interesting thing, which again, I'm not sure this is really how it's supposed to go, this ad appeared at least 3, if not 4 working days before the report even exists that outlines what their comprehensive actions are going to be. That is supposed to be issued tomorrow or Thursday and will be copied to the Conservation Department as well as to the Water Department. As well as it has to be copied, I think, to the Selectmen and to the Health Department. So the 20-day comment period, which supposedly is triggered by this ad, ends up having at least 3 or 4 useless days in it because
There's no report.
because there's no report to read and comment on. But here again, that may not be an issue. What may be a bigger issue is that Fuss and O'Neill tells me that the property owner who's investigating what they're going to do on the site, whether they're going to upgrade it, whether they're going to this, whether they're going to do that, they have 2 years to implement that, whatever the comprehensive action plan says. So the good news is that the initial report seems to indicate that what, and I don't even know whether I should say small amount of product or whatever, that the petroleum product that was released apparently wasn't in a big enough quantity or didn't go through the soil enough that it does not appear from their initial excavation that it reached groundwater on the site. And there's the concern, there's 2 concerning things in the report. The first concerning thing is that they may not have been able to remove all the contaminated soil because there were other active fuel lines that stopped them being able to.
They didn't want to disturb them.
Right. The second thing that may or may not, that is less concerning but still concerning, is that an odor was noticed in the bathroom of that facility. Because they actively repair vehicles there, though, they're not sure if the odor of petroleum product had to do with some vehicle that they had been servicing, or a workman who came into the bathroom and used the bathroom and just had a whole bunch of vapors on his clothes or something.
Well, there's an allegedly unused drain hole inside that building. Contaminated soil, the vapors could have been coming up through that.
Right, like a sump hole.
Right, but well, that was supposed to have been plugged, but that's another concern. The other concern is whether there's old infrastructure that either wasn't solidly plugged as it was supposed to be, because they were supposed to cap and close any of the floor drains in there. That was supposed to have been done back whenever the ancient release that went through the floor drains occurred. Yeah, so this is kind of in a funny state where there's some indications from the report that there are some reasons for concern, but we don't know what's going to propose to be done, and we also then don't know when they have to do it because they're apparently not regulatorily obliged to do it until could take 2 years.
Well, a key location from the diagram is it's right next to where the propane tanks are filled, and I've seen people smoking right there when I'm getting my propane tank filled.
I've never seen anybody smoking there. I think I'd kind of walk away rapidly if I did.
Not a good idea.
Big signs that say don't smoke here.
Yeah, that's as much as I know.
Those are diesel pumps on that side of the building. I don't think they're gasoline pumps, but
Right.
Lord knows where the old tanks were.
And where all the tanks are.
Where all those pipes are going and coming, and whether they were ever capped and off.
So will we see a copy of the report when it's issued?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
And at that point in time, we'll
Yeah.
decide what we should do then.
It is.
I mean, in a sense, I've already stuck my thumb into the dike, and they finally called me back after the emails, and they had a conference call with the two lead people at Fuss and O'Neill, and I said, just so you know, this is a very sensitive site for us. We're very interested in what's going on. We have to talk to the property owner. I said, I realize you have to do that. I said, but just understand that we're not saying that anybody's doing anything wrong. We just want to know and want to be informed, and when these opportunities for us to be able to comment, we want to be able to know of them. And because, we obviously also probably don't want to have to wait for 2 years for any further sampling and testing to go on there.
Is the buffer zone in there? Or it doesn't quite reach that?
But it's all zone 2.
It's all zone 2, right?
Yeah.
So
Aquifer.
yeah, pretty
Based
close
on-
to the well.
Based on what Charlie said. Was Charlie, when he put the line up the street, was that his 100 foot from the river or 200 feet?
Well, any depiction of riverfront on on the bank's plan would have been 200 foot, although he may have also shown the intermediate 100-foot riparian line. May have shown that. Again, I don't believe, I think,
outside that.
I believe I've investigated this before, as well as we had an application, an RDA application, because they wanted to do some soil evaluations on that site. And that was actually, remember, that was what,
That wasn't long ago.
2008 or 2009, and that triggered us finding that old open order that
Right.
water quality monitoring required on it,
Yeah.
which actually triggered us requiring them to do the monitoring, which they then found levels of arsenic, reportable levels in 2 of the wells that were sampled,
That's right.
and they had to do a further investigation and then determined that that apparently was coming from just naturally occurring, because it wasn't consistent in all the wells, nor was it even, I think one of the wells, when they repeated the test, didn't show it, so they figured it may possibly just have had to do with whatever soils were filled there or naturally occurring arsenic. But either way, so we have a familiarity. They've actually got some monitoring wells that we required them to put in, because they had to reinstall some, because the older ones, when we told them they needed to do the testing, they found a couple of them weren't capable of being used again. So we know the site has monitoring wells that can be used.
The other thing that bothers me a little bit about it is that somehow the selectman's office and Board of Health never occurred to them to get us into that loop. It's surprising, but it shouldn't happen again if it comes up again. I don't know what we can do about that. I mean, I would think normally both of those entities would get you involved.
Well,
Especially for that site, but really for any
yeah,
site.
but it wouldn't be so, yeah, it actually isn't. I wouldn't necessarily say that was a primary concern, but unfortunately, the break in continuity with employees in the water department, that would have been more of a concern.
Well, the proximity to
If the water department
wells,
hadn't been told about this, that I definitely would have considered kind of an actionable or a legitimate complaint.
Something that needed
But
to be
because
corrected.
personnel have all changed over there, they don't know.
We'll never know. Yeah.
But I brought them immediately in, got them all the information, got them up to speed. Well, in terms of just what I found, everything I found and downloaded, I then shared with them,
Right.
so that they would know about it too. So it's got their attention now, and Fuss and O'Neill has been asked to copy us
Right.
and the water department as well as the select.
I guess I'm just saying that if this ever comes up again at a different site or at this site, it would be better if we got involved sooner rather than later, because it's as much this commission's concern as it is the water department's concern, the selectmen's concern, the Board of Health's
Right.
concern. We all bring different expertise to the subject,
Yeah.
so something that it's surprising that we hear about it a year later.
And it was only because a call was placed
Yeah.
to ask about the wells.
Yep.
Well, again, not really. It's because I saw that
And
ad.
you saw the, yeah. So there were two
And
things.
then put it together, huh? Somebody was just asking me about irrigation wells. What in the world? I mean, I guess when I initially got the call and was being asked about the wells, I thought, well, geez, not only do I know where they are, I thought, would you like some field sketches of where they're actually located? So, no, you can just tell me. That would be good enough. Okay.
So was that just a legal ad to
Yes.
notify that there's going to be a 20-day comment period?
Basically, it's what it
Okay.
reads like,
That's
yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't that have to be posted in local newspapers, in Boston Globe, who reads that? Or is it Globe North?
It may have been the Globe North. It probably was the Globe North, because I always read the Globe North section.
Right, me too, but I didn't see that.
Yeah.
I tried it when my wife said it was a great article by Beverly Beckham in the last one, I never got around to reading it. Beverly actually lives down in Canada. She has a column in the Globe and Mail.
Right. It was, I mean, I would like to think if I had noticed that in the north section, I would have said, 165. Really? No kidding? What are they talking about? I gotta ask Brent. I don't remember hearing about this. I'd like to think I would have done that, but I'm not sure I would have
See,
done
if
that.
I'd read that, I would have said, well, I guess we'll be hearing about this from Brent next week, next meeting.
Yeah. I probably would have read that and thought, I bet that's that arsenic thing. I don't remember how that played out. It's probably something to do with that. Maybe I would have asked you and maybe not. That's probably it.
The report turnpike part of it, if you want to read
Right.
it.
Yeah, it certainly catches your eye if you look at
But
that.
I haven't read the little section.
It's true though, what good does it do you to put it in the Globe if you don't put it in the Daily News or the
Well, and they may have, I mean, I don't get the Daily News, so I don't have.
You do though, you often send us stuff from there.
Well, I look at it
You
online,
look at it online.
but that, you don't see the ads, I mean, it's not, it doesn't have, yeah, what I'm looking for. I mean, the interesting thing is the Globe, because I subscribe to it, I do get an electronic edition that is a representation of the
Picture.
the full page.
Right.
You can look at the full page, so you can
Ads
see
and all.
the ads and stuff. But currently, the Eagle Tribune Empire there
It's
just does it by stories.
Just the editorial content.
Yeah, although they're busy talking about doing some kind of online thing, but I don't know whether their implementation is.
Well, they have ads, but they're different ads. They're the online advertising.
Yeah.
Must be a different advertising department.
So I'll
Okay.
keep the commission apprised as,
I
you
don't
know,
what else we can do.
as I learn and as soon as, hopefully if I get copied on it, I will share it with you folks.
All right, anything else?
Well, yes, although I'm going to admit that I'm kind of slightly inadequately prepared for this because I just got the draft budget, but and I think I distributed the budget guidelines. So I guess the important thing just to share with the commission is that in FY15 budget for non-union employees, we are going to be provided with wage increases, a 1% cost of living increase, and then step increases in accordance with the new personnel system. This has to do with their competitive survey of the North Shore and what salaries were. You may or may not recall that I received a salary increase last year because it was discovered that apparently conservation agent wages, the base level that I was being compensated at was substantially lower than equivalent communities in the North Shore area. And it was not just conservation agents, but other town administrative and various other town employees had the same thing. So,
Well, did that catch you up to that level, or?
well, what I was going to say, yes, it was going to be progressive,
Mm-hmm.
and the first increase was not necessarily indicative of what each successive increase was going to be. I have not actually even seen the salary schedule sheet, but I can tell you from the preliminary numbers that I received in the draft budget that is to assist me in preparing a request, is that it shows for my salary, it shows an increase of $1,274, which is equivalent to 2.5%. So 1% of that is the cost of living increase. The other 1.5% must be the next step of the implementation of bringing the salary for my particular category of work up to parity with other North Shore communities. So with the commission's permission, I'd like to proceed with that, but the main thing that unfortunately I was hoping that I have been told that it is shameful that our department's expense line has not seen any type of upward adjustment for approximately the 10 years that I've worked here. And so therefore, I've been requested to up the expense request, but I need to work on substantiating it, which actually shouldn't be that hard to do. It's just that we have had the notice of intent monies, and so I've utilized those on a fairly consistent basis when I could, because you do have some restrictions in how you utilize that. I will say that probably the part of our budget that really deserves to be covered under our expense line is I've never been able to support all the telephone expenses through the whole year. I've always had to seek a shift of some of the phone bills going to the NOI fund. Within the context that obviously some of my phone calls are totally focused on Wetlands Protection Act type things, but you couldn't substantiate that. If anybody asked me to give them a phone log or whatever, I don't have a phone log and I can't tell you what topic I've discussed. But just as an example, so my expense line for the last 10 years has basically been $1,622. We are actually the lowest. We have the lowest expense line of all the town departments, even the ZBA with a part-time person, and I'm not part-time anymore. Even they have $1,680 to cover their expenses. Debbie Egan, town administrator, told me she fully supports and will support. And so I'm looking to at least support possibly an increase at least to $2,000, if not maybe a little more. And I believe I can do that easily by figuring out what the total cumulative amount of telephone expenses are. One of the biggest thing that comes out of our expense line that can't come from notice of intent monies is our membership with MACC, which is, they've already notified us that for FY15, our dues will be $456. They were $443 this past year. So that is like the single biggest item in one shot. It may not be when I cumulatively add the telephone expense, it might be more than that. But right now, my cell phone expenses, for which the commission has a policy of compensating me $25 a month for use of my cell phone, which I do use a fair amount. So that comes out to $300 on an annual basis. So just between those two items right there, we have $700. So that's half of what the current expense line. And that's not even looking at then the office supplies, which already I've been able to substantiate $400. And that's really only half.
And you get a lot of your supplies in New Hampshire where it doesn't cost you as much as it does down here.
Well, it really costs the same because I could use I could set up an account and use the town's municipal exemption for sales tax. I really don't save anything on the net price of the item, but I just avoid having to set up a separate account with the municipal tax exemption certificate on file. And it's just that because I live in Haverhill and do at least every 2 weeks I go across the border for pet food and some other stuff that happens to be where the retailers are closest to my residence, and there's a Staples right there, so I just,
Right.
you know, the town wouldn't compensate me for paying the sales tax anyway, and I wouldn't, you know, not set up an account, because I do a fair amount of the commission's business does come, stuff from Staples. So,
Right. Well, it sounds like a good idea, and if Debbie Egan supports it, then I'm sure it will be approved by the appropriate budget committees. But I think you're going about documenting it the right way, it sounds to me. That's certainly good.
well, I just wanted to mention it to you so I could
Yep.
have your support. I apologize for not having
No, that's all right.
everything all added up, and,
When we meet next, you probably will have it through somewhere.
well, but I have to submit it before that.
Do you?
Yeah, I have to
Okay,
submit
so
it
I
in the
was
next
just
2
gonna ask you
days.
that.
I have to submit it in the next 2 days.
All right, well, show us what you submit.
good.
No, but
Well, we've been briefed on it,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Well, yes,
Policy.
exactly, yeah.
I mean, come up to the, you know, if I could make a suggestion, I would go about what you're doing, you know, come up to it as close as you can, and then I'd add some wiggle room,
Right.
you know.
Right.
at
To make
least-
it a round number.
Yeah, make it at least a round number, you know,
Yeah.
so you have, you know, add 10%, whatever, you know.
But for goodness sakes, I mean, just the price of the things you buy has gone up significantly
Right.
over 10 years.
Yeah.
Toner costs more.
So make sure that wiggle room
You
is,
know, paper costs more.
Realistic.
Postage has gone up substantially
Sure.
in 10
Yeah.
years. So all those things have gone up. The
Yeah, don't
expense
shy.
level has to go.
ask for more.
Well, no, and, you know, and Jean, you know, our senior assistant in the office, she's very helpful, and we've, you know, I got a version of Quicken, so we've been categorizing these. And actually, a year ago, in anticipation of this, we sat down and we did an actual outline of how to put the different things that I buy, what classification they should go in, so that we would consistently enter them and be able to do like we did this morning. We had it spit out a report, and I just started adding together, and just, okay, that's for, basically, we did it for half the year, because that's what we've gone through, so I'm just gonna take and double those or whatever, but.
Yep.
Yeah, then I don't think any of them are seasonal, so that should work. I mean, they're pretty much consistent across the year. So.
Yeah, just at different times. I mean, obviously, the more permitting activity we have, with the more presentation of pictures and stuff like that, but as Debbie was saying today, she says, well, you know, you're our go-to guy on the floodplain stuff. Actually, I've got a seminar in Ipswich to go to tomorrow, a workshop, that she asked me to go to. And she says, and then you, like you're doing now with land evaluation, you're doing that, and, you know, doing deed searches and stuff. So she says it's ridiculous that, you know, you've got such a pitiful expense line. When,
It should
you
be
know,
double at least.
Something that, you know, just to throw out a wild idea to think about, thinking of all these police cameras that are on their vehicles. I mean, these things, you can now get in the marketplace, from what I understand, camera arrangements that capture angles from all 4 sides of the vehicle. And I don't know what the expense is, but when you go out on official business, it might be useful to have a set of that to capture the terrain and the people that you're dealing with. And, I mean, you're out there in hunting season often,
Yeah,
and
right.
it might be useful to have. I don't know what the cost of these is, but
Put 4 on your head.
yeah.
Are you telling me I could get a drone?
No, he's wanted a drone.
Only if you're an ice fisherman up in Wisconsin and having beer flown into you with a drone. I saw that on television the other day.
That's an idea.
Coors Light.
Jeez.
Gotten a number of ads for little drones with 4 little propellers and,
Yeah.
and a mount for a
That would be
GoPro.
great.
The
You could just
GoPro
sit in your
camera.
office, you could just look at the controls and just kind of watch.
It has to be current FAA regulations. It has to be under visual control. The operator it has to be inside of the operator.
Poses lots of really complicated issues in FAA world privacy.
It's gonna get more
issues.
complicated as
Yeah,
time
that's
goes
right.
on.
Technology is getting ahead of us
You
again.
wouldn't have to rely on those satellite pictures.
Yeah, you wouldn't. And you just send a
There-
drone over the.
There's more down-to-earth things that I believe that.
you wonder if somebody is doing some inappropriate cutting, you just send the drone over and look down at it.
Buzz them.
Yeah, they'll never see it. All right. What else do we have? Anything?
You could just have it release a little calling card on a little paragraph.
Yeah.
ConCom agent was just watching you.
So
Call down your wetland plans.
You're a rifle shot, there goes your gun.
Yeah. That, I believe, is it for
Okay.
various items to bring before the commission.
All right. Well, anyway, I think you have this, sounds like you have the support of the commission, unanimous support of the commission in increasing the expense line accordingly.
Yes.
So, seems like a good idea. I don't know how we managed to not do it over the last few years, just one of those things. All right, so anything else? I guess I need a motion to adjourn.